Hey guys, how's it going? This is Natnator, and welcome back, finally, to a new Creepypasta narration. I thought this one had a really interesting idea behind it, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. It's titled, The Man with Yellow Eyes. Now as always, turn out the lights, get comfortable, and let the story begin. My life is a rather simple one. I sit in front of my computer, some work, some play, most of the day, and usually order in when I'm hungry. I go out only when I feel I absolutely need to. I don't boast of many friends, and the only living member of my family is an estranged sister I haven't spoken to in at least 7 years. A fling here, a fling there, but I am single. This is how I can identify a lonely person, even from a distance, without knowing much about them. I am one. And then one day, for no particular reason, I started noticing him. It began one morning. I was sipping coffee and just loitering around my living room window, assessing the day as I examined the road below. It was a lovely morning, the kind that energizes you and fills you with hope and happiness for no particular reason. There was a light, yet intoxicating scent in the air. The sunlight felt like a warm, safe cocoon, and I was just glad to be. This was when I spotted another figure, standing in front of the cafe on the opposite side of the road. He was highlighted in a spot of warm sunlight. His face turned up, eyes closed. I felt an instant connection to this person. I felt as if a bridge had built itself between two islands. From that day on, every morning, I would stand at my window at the same time, expecting to see him. He never failed me. He was always there. He never looked up at my window, never acknowledged me. You could almost believe he didn't know I was there, except I felt he knew. Every day we met, him outside the cafe, his face turned up toward the sun, his eyes closed, and me, up in my living room window, a coffee mug in my hand, watching him. I began to feel like we had just shared a coffee together, like we had held a silent conversation over our drinks, which was far more powerful than words. Then, one day, some 2 months into our relationship, I saw him in a completely different mood. He rushed out of the cafe, frantic, looking this way and that, raking his hair with his fingers, as if trying to locate someone he had lost sight of, as if trying to understand something. He left soon after. That sight put me off balance. I was so used to seeing the calm side of him. It had become imperative to my balmy mornings. That day, I felt agitated, as if his agitation had crossed the bridge that existed between us and taken over my being. I couldn't work. I couldn't sleep. I could hardly sit still. That afternoon, as I sat in front of my TV, shuffling through channels and not really watching anything. I heard a terrible screech and crash from the road below. The sirens followed soon. It was an accident. They happen sometimes on this road. I'd been witness to 2 in my time here. They're unfortunate, but they usually don't rattle me much. However, that day, my already anxious mind felt like it had been jolted out of its place. It was one of those days. I saw in the news the next day that a little girl had died while her father had sustained major injuries. My friend did not visit the cafe for the next few days. I resumed my routine soon enough. The memories of that day vanished quickly. In a week, my friend and I got back to our meetings. He was calm again. He looked almost happy, and I was content to see that. Almost 3 weeks must have passed without incident. Then, one morning, he once again rushed out of the cafe in a panic, looking right and left, running his fingers through his hair. But this time, he didn't leave. He did something he'd never done before. He looked up at my window and saw me. For the first time, he looked right at me for a long, long moment. I felt frozen to the spot. Then he left. That was the day I decided I should go downstairs and meet him. The next day, I dressed and went to the cafe, expecting to see him. I spotted him in a corner. He looked up when he saw me. I took the seat opposite him, as if we had done this all the time. "How are you today?" I asked. "Better," he said. "What happened?" "He came to show me again." "Who came? And showed you what?" "You wouldn't believe it," he said, shaking his head from side to side. "I wouldn't?" I asked him incredulously, thinking of how we had become friends. He considered it for a moment. "Well, maybe you would," he conceded. And he told me. "There's a man. He comes to see me sometimes. He's a tall man, wears a cap with a rather long visor. It almost obliterates his features in shadow. But his eyes, you couldn't miss his eyes even if you wanted to. The whites are so yellow, they're almost fluorescent. You would imagine he has jaundice or something." He trailed off, looking through the glass at the road outside. "And what does he show you?" "People," he said, after some time. There was a pause where he sipped his coffee and I waited for more. "He shows me people." I nodded, although I wasn't sure I understood just yet. "Remember that accident where that little girl died and her father was hospitalized?" I nodded. I did remember. I also remembered he had been very agitated that morning when he left the cafe. Yellow eyes. That's what I call the man. He showed me something that morning. What? I was beginning to get impatient. I saw him walking around with a child in a pink skirt. Such an innocent face. She was giggling at something he said, her hair bouncing on her shoulders as she skipped along. And then, that afternoon, she was dead. I felt numb. Was he suggesting he had prior knowledge of events? Now, I'm not someone who shuns the idea, but even to me, it seemed a little too much. I tried to rationalize it. I saw you were in a panic yesterday too. Did you see the man again? I asked, opening an inquiry. I did. He nodded. And did he show you something? Or someone? He did. He pointed at someone. And did something bad happen to them? No, not yet. Well, there you have it. Maybe the man isn't right about everything after all. I smiled. Maybe, he said, but did not smile. All right, you're not convinced. Let me try again. Tell me, who did he point at? He paused, considering me intently, and then went on. You, he said. My mouth fluttered open and shut, as if I were gasping for air, like a fish pulled out of the water. He pointed at you. I rushed out to see where he had vanished off to, and what he was pointing at. I couldn't locate him, but I saw you, standing in that window with a mug in your hand. I see. That was all I could manage just then. And even though this entire premonition thing sounded like nonsense, I couldn't shake off that feeling of dread. He reached for my hand and held it for one long moment, giving me strength. I held it tight, not knowing why. All I'm saying is, please be careful, he said. Of what? I asked. I don't know. He sighed and shook his head. I went back home after that, and for no reason, I was extra careful about everything. I checked and rechecked the gas knobs, never used my hairdryer in the bathroom, fearing an electric shock. Started cooking my own meals, lest I caught an infection from restaurant food. It was unnerving and exhausting. Also, I let go of my morning routine. I never stood in the window to watch my friend. A whole week passed without incident, and frankly, by this point, the whole idea of me being in danger was beginning to feel rather silly. I began to relax more and more with each passing day. By the end of 2 weeks, I was completely over it. And here I am today, at my window again. It's a lovely morning. The sun is warm, and there is a scent on the breeze that lightly ruffles my hair. I inhale deeply. I'm glad to be alive and well. I see him walking out of the cafe, toward the road, tapping his phone screen. I think he'll be glad to see me, see that I am still alive and well. Maybe that will ease his hallucinations, his fear of the yellow-eyed man. "Hey there," I call out to him. He's reached the edge of the road, but is still tapping something on his phone. "Hello?" I call out again. He finally hears me and stops walking. He turns around to look at me. I wave. He waves back. "Alive and well," I say. He gives me a thumbs up as he begins to turn to cross the road. And just then, I hear a terrible thud. A truck hit him.